Great to see you all here this morning, and absolutely brilliant to kind of have the buzz of people outside having coffee and chatting and talking and kind of meeting new people and sharing interest in this incredibly important area. And of course, this is our annual climate change conference. We've been holding them since 2019. So lots of new faces and, of course, lots of familiar faces as well here today. And as Emer said, when we were looking at the topic for this conference, we wanted to have something that was particularly topical and maybe that hasn't been covered as much as other topics. And the idea of tackling emissions through the carbon market really resonated with us because there's so much happening in this space. Under the EU climate law, EU member states are committed to becoming climate neutral by 2050, as I'm sure you're all aware. And the EU aims to reduce its net emissions by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. The EU has already reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by a third, driven and supported by a mix of policy and support measures, including carbon pricing, targets and rules-based approaches. And in fact, today the EU made an announcement, some of you may have seen, that they are on track, or we as a bloc are on track to meeting the 2030 target. But today, as I said, our focus is on the role of carbon pricing and in particular the European Union Emissions Trading Scheme, which was the world's first major carbon market and remains the largest globally. And also we want to discuss the carbon border adjustment mechanisms. Between these two, these are key initiatives in our fight against climate change. The EU ETS was the world's first major carbon market. It remains the largest globally and is a cornerstone of EU climate policy. You'll hear today how it has been instrumental in reducing greenhouse gas emissions by setting a cap on the total amount of certain greenhouse gases that can be emitted by installations covered by the system. The recent expansion of the EU ETS aims to introduce more sectors and, of course, to tighten the cap, thereby accelerating our transition to a low-carbon economy. In Ireland, the EPA has a wide range of responsibilities within Ireland's climate change response. The administration of the Emissions Trading Scheme and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism is a core part of EPA's climate change remit, which of course also includes climate change statistics, which I'll talk about later, further to our announcement this morning, but also climate adaptation, climate science and international engagement, climate research and behavioural insights. And the emissions trading system has matured in the 20 years since the EPA was appointed as the competent authority for the instrument in Ireland. And as recent revisions to the system come into force, the carbon market will also incentivise carbon reductions from aviation, road transport and heating and buildings, under what's commonly known as, in a very imaginative way, ETS2, but it is that expansion of this very successful system. The Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism itself was introduced as part of the EU's Fit for 55 package. It's designed to prevent carbon leakage by ensuring that the price of carbon is reflected in the cost of imported goods. Currently, it's in transitional phase, and the CBAM is expected to be fully implemented by 2026. In Ireland, the EPA will oversee the compliance of importers with CBAM regulation, ensuring that the carbon content of imported goods is accurately reported and that the appropriate carbon costs are applied. This role is crucial in maintaining the integrity of the EU's climate policies and supporting Ireland's commitment to reducing emissions. And in the context of industry and business, the most recent climate change in the Irish mines studies completed by the EPA in partnership with Yale University on climate change communication found that 87% of people in Ireland think businesses need to take more action on climate change. Businesses that proactively reduce their carbon footprint can benefit from a more level playing field and access to new markets that prioritise sustainability. For businesses in Ireland, the EU ETS and CBAM both present opportunities as well as challenges. These initiatives offer opportunities for innovation and competitiveness through investment in cleaner technologies and more efficient processes, while also adapting and responding to strict regulations on carbon emissions associated with manufacturing, and also on the potential costs associated with carbon-intensive imports. The EU ETS and CBAM are transformative measures that will shape the future of our economy and environment. By embracing these changes, Irish businesses can lead the way in creating a sustainable and a prosperous future. So, throughout today, we will engage with experts through keynote speeches, presentations, and of course, panel discussions. This morning, we're going to be setting the scene with high-level perspectives across the EU and Irish industry. The opening address will be provided by Una Buckley, Secretary-General of the Department of Environment, and we're delighted that Una took the time to be with us this morning. And we're also delighted that Danny McCoy, the CEO of IBEC, will address this issue from a national standpoint. And from a European perspective, we've got Luca De Carli, the Deputy Director at DG Klima, who will discuss European and international dimensions. So we're covering really a wide range of angles on the topic. In our second session, we'll delve into regulation from an Irish, German and UK perspective, exploring where we've been and also, of course, where we're heading. And this session will also highlight future challenges with regard to regulation. Our third and final session will provide sectoral perspectives, examining how various sectors interact with the carbon markets. We'll cover electricity, aviation, maritime, and carbon offsetting in voluntary markets in international aviation. But at the beginning of my remarks, I referred to the role of target-based mechanisms to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And today, which many of you may have heard, the EPA published our greenhouse gas projections for the period 2024 to 2055. And what are they showing us? Well, the EPA projections show us that full implementation of climate action plans and policies could deliver reductions of up to 23% in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, compared to a national target of 51%. So we are very significantly away from our target. And even to achieve that reduction of 23% would require full implementation of a wide range of policies and plans across all sectors, and for these to deliver the full anticipated carbon savings. The first carbon budget and second carbon budget are projected to be exceeded, with almost all sectors on a trajectory to exceed their national sectoral ceiling emissions for 2030. It is also projected that Ireland will not meet our EU target set under the effort sharing regulation of a 42% reduction by 2030. And total emissions from the land sector are projected to increase by up to 95%, and Ireland is unlikely to meet our European commitments in this area also. Transport, industry and the building residential sectors are projected to be the furthest from their sectoral emission ceilings in 2030, with emission reductions of up to 21%, 12% and 22% respectively. Agricultural emissions are projected to reduce by up to 16%, very significantly away from the 25% target. And although, as reported by the EPA last year in our 2023 inventory, emission trends are going in the right direction, the gap to our EU and our national emission reduction targets are now projected to be larger than last year. And ultimately, this highlights the immense economy-wide effort that is needed, and also we need to focus and shift from policy aspiration and development of plans to implementation of those plans. As we get closer to 2030, and we receive more information on the impact of agreed policies and measures, It is concerning to see projected reductions and lack of progress in the delivery of actions to reduce emissions, including in the electrification of our transport sector and the expansion of renewable electricity powering our homes and businesses, and the implementation, of course, of carbon reduction measures in the agricultural sector. As we get closer to 2030, additional measures and accelerated implementation of existing measures is necessary across all sectors to meet both our national and EU commitments. While momentum is building for Ireland's low-carbon society, we must, of course, speed up the scale of the transition required. So, I'm conscious that we have a great range of speakers today, so I'm going to leave it at that. I'll be participating in a panel discussion later on this morning, so you can get all of your questions ready for myself and Luca from the European Commission, and I will leave it at that. Thank you very much, Emer.